Is all set up? Is everybody good? All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Kelly. I'm the General Superintendent and CEO of the Chicago Park District, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to West Englewood and welcome you all to Ogden Park. I'm pleased to be here, of course, with Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Alderman David Moore, and Alderman Stephanie Coleman I saw as well. Today we're here to discuss the city's coordinated efforts to ensure that Chicago has a safe and enjoyable 4th of July weekend. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge some of our local leaders. I want to acknowledge Ogden Park Supervisor David Bailey, Area Manager Phil Hampton. Both of them have been working tirelessly to put summer on here at Ogden Park. And I also want to give a shout out to our newest landscape foreman, Juvie Gomez. I hope when you guys came in, you all saw how beautiful this 60-acre park looked on the outside. Like many of the parks across the city, Ogden Park serves as an anchor for the Englewood community since 1905. And for more than 100 years, Ogden Park continues to serve as an oasis for our neighboring residents. This is where the families of Englewood come to meet up, to exercise, enjoy their children, enjoy the outdoors, and participate in our programs like day camp. And I want to remind everyone, day camp starts Monday, July 6th. There are still spaces available. There are spaces available right now at Ogden Park in nearby Hamilton and Lindblom. So if you need something for your child to do, please go to our website, chicagoparkdistrict.com, and sign your kids up for camp. And I'd be remiss if I'm going to talk about programs if I don't talk about the Ogden Park Vikings. Yes. Beautiful, beautiful track and field out there. More to come on that. But the Ogden Park Vikings, a perennial powerhouse along with their cheer team in this neighborhood, doing the right things by kids. And I was just told I can say this, and I'm not going to get in trouble. Ogden Park Viking Anthony Williams will be the starting running back for Michigan State this fall. And it's not just about football. Also is used by Cinco de Mayo Soccer, Bass Elementary, and Johnson Prep High School. This new field, these investments, this is all part of Mayor Lightfoot's initiative, Invest South and West. It's about making the investments on the south side and on the west side and in our communities. And more importantly, it's not just about a track and field or a football, it's investing in our youth. That's our future, right? This is our future. So I could sit up here, I could go on and on about park stuff, believe me, but today's about the weekend. So please, couple of things, and I'm not going to steal Commissioner Ford's thunder, but you know, artificial turf fields, please don't use them as your personal base for your fireworks this weekend. Please don't do that. We need that field for the kids. We need the other 45 fields across the city for the kids. If you're barbecuing, please dispose of your hot coals properly. Don't dump them on the tree. And I want to remind everybody the beaches are still closed. The water is still off limits. The lakefront trail is open. Enjoy the lakefront. You just can't use the beaches and the water. And with that, it is my pleasure to thank the mayor for her leadership, her commitment to investing in the parks, her investment on the south and west side. And with that, I'd like to invite Mayor Lightfoot to the podium.
All right. You know, I had to hold my nose when Superintendent Kelly talked about Michigan State, but that's all right. Grateful to the young man, glad that he's going to be representing this community, even if he's playing for the Sparty. Thank you, Superintendent Kelly, for that introduction, and I want to acknowledge the many other city leaders who are here today. Of course, Alderman David Moore, who's sporting the Simeon blue. Police Superintendent David Brown, and congratulations, Superintendent. This is, I think, his first public outing in his new uniform, and I know he's proud to wear the uniform of the Chicago Police Department. Fire Commissioner Richard Ford II, BACP Commissioner Rosa Escarino, OAMC Director Rich Gaitis, Alderman Stephanie Coleman, thank you for being here with us, and Department of Family and Support Services First Deputy Brandy Kanazi. I'm also very pleased that Chris Patterson from the Institute for Nonviolent Chicago is also here with us. And the Institute will be with us across the city and serve among our many outreach organizations this weekend that we have fully embraced, and we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're supporting them with resources so they can expand their reach into areas of the city that are most in need. And we just heard Superintendent Kelly say we're here to announce the measures our city will be taking to ensure Chicago has a restful, fun, but above all safe 4th of July. Like everything else over the past few months, this year's holiday will be different. And different in part due to COVID-19, but also different, I think, because many of us are reflecting upon what our Declaration of Independence means. Declaration of Independence that was written by and for a certain class of people that didn't include people like me. Didn't include blacks, didn't include women, didn't include our indigenous populations, and was premised on this notion of life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, but only for a certain class. Now, the world has changed a lot since those documents were first drafted, and that Declaration of Independence from the tyranny of King George was read out loud to the world. But we still must remember we have a long way to go to fully embrace and embody the spirit of what makes the United States different, the spirit of making sure that we are a government that is representative of the will of the people, the spirit of making sure that we focus on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of all of our residents, not just the chosen few. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about as we reflect upon what the 4th of July means in this world, in this time where we've experienced so much as a community, as a state, and as a country. Now, many traditions have been canceled or moved online. However, Chicagoans, of course, will still be out relaxing and having fun. And we'll be doing everything that we can to ensure that actually happens safely and responsibly. And I'm grateful for the many members of this district and the command staff who are also here. This has got to be an all hands on deck approach to community. It's not just on the police department, not just on the fire department, not just on elected officials. All of us have to embrace our notion of community and step up and think about what we can do, each of us in our own way, to make our communities safe and healthy and vibrant. We can't give that responsibility to anybody else. If we do that, we're giving our power over our own lives, over our own communities, to somebody else. It's on each of us to step up and own this space in this moment. And I hope that we do that. To echo Superintendent Mike Kelly's comments earlier, Millennium Park, Maggie Daley Park, and most of our neighborhood parks will be open during the 4th of July weekend with safe social distancing and face coverings. Meanwhile, the Lakefront Trail, Riverwalk, and 606 will continue to open so long as visitors keep it moving. And that means running, biking, but moving. What that doesn't mean is standing or congregating. And for that same reason, Chicago's beaches will remain closed throughout the holiday weekend. And folks, let me be clear about this. Every single year, we lose so many people who drown in Lake Michigan. And this year, we have no lifeguards on the beaches because the beaches are closed. Please, don't be foolish. The lake is dangerous. It always is. It is deep. It has riptides and currents underneath the water that you may not see when it looks calm and placid on top. Be smart. Do not go into the lake. There's no lifeguards, and we don't want you to be another drowning casualty in our city. Now, to help us reinforce all of this along the lakefront and in our parks, CPD's Bike and Marine Unit will be patrolling the area to keep our residents in compliance. I want to say a special word about our bars and restaurants. I cannot make this any plainer. We simply cannot have any large gatherings like we saw last weekend in our bars and restaurants. On a call earlier today, I think there were several hundred people that were on. I made it very plain to bar and restaurant owners this is a make or break weekend for you. Your financial fate is in your hands. Abide by the rules, or unfortunately, you're going to suffer the consequences. And we're not playing with this. Heard a lot of complaints. Mayor, it's so difficult. Mayor this, mayor that, all kinds of excuses. It's on you. We see what's happening in states around the country, even all the states that are surrounding us. And when governors get concerned, what do they do first? They shut down the bars and they shut down the restaurants. We have worked very, very hard to get to this point. We've been very prudent in our approach. We haven't done what other states have done, which is just throw the barn door open and let people have at it. That's not the approach that we've taken. And we've seen when that approach has happened, what the consequences are. Cases all over the country on fire. Record numbers of new cases and deaths from across the country and all around Chicago. That's not going to be our story. We're going to do everything that we can to keep members of the public safe. Safe from COVID, safe from violence. But to COVID, business owners, your fate is in your hands. I don't want to have to shut you down, but if you make me, I will. We've been very clear about that. And Commissioner Escarino will talk more about that. We simply cannot tolerate the large, huge crowds of people. No social distancing, queued up on the street, nobody wearing masks. It's just foolish. And yes, members of the public, you have a responsibility to wear a face covering when you're outside, no question about it. But business owners, your financial fate depends upon you enforcing the guidelines that we drafted for you and with you. So please, abide by the rules this weekend. We're going to be out and we're going to be active and we're going to be looking. And if we see businesses that are flouting the rules, that are putting your profit over the public health and safety of your workers, of members of the public, we're not going to hesitate to shut you down. And if you are shut down, you're not coming back anytime soon. I can't be any more clear than that. We are not going to suffer the fate that we've seen of other states and localities across the country that did not prudently recognize that reopening is not throwing open the barn door. Reopening needs to be cautious. It needs to be prudent. It is turning the dimmer switch, not flicking the light switch and letting everything go up for grabs. It's not going to happen in Chicago. And given our concerns over congregating, it should also come as no surprise that we've canceled all of our fireworks activities this weekend. This is disappointing. It's disappointing to me personally, but it was prudent because we couldn't take the risk of having crowds congregate around fireworks. The risk of spread is still too dangerous. Now, Chief Ford will speak in more detail on this in a moment, but while we encourage Chicagoans to engage in safe alternative celebrations, please, I want to discourage folks everywhere from using illegal fireworks, which are illegal for a reason. We all know as kids, I'm old enough to remember, seeing people with their digits blown off, injured, ending up in emergency rooms because folks didn't take the power and danger of fireworks seriously. So please, don't add yourself to those ranks and be one of those stories. Now, the temperatures we're expecting to climb into the 90s this week. The city departments are going to be working around the clock to conduct check well-beings and to ensure that our most vulnerable residents have access to facilities that provide relief from heat. This includes DFSS Garfield Cooling Center, which will be open from 9 to 5. To ensure that we have reconfigured our center to ensure visitors can remain 6 feet apart. The CTA will be ready to deploy cooling buses where necessary. And finally, I'd like to speak to the issue of what I'm sure is on everyone's mind as we enter this holiday weekend, and that's keeping our residents safe from gun violence. Violence, unfortunately, continues to destroy the lives of way too many of our residents and rip at the seams that make up the fabric of our city. Make no mistake about it, public safety is first, second, third priority this weekend. And as I said at the outset, this has to be an all-hands-on-deck approach. Obviously, the police department and our other law enforcement partners have a key role to play, but so do each of us. We know that in certain areas of the city, gathering in mass is a recipe for tragedy. Please take care. Stay in your homes, stay in your backyards. Be careful when you're going out in public. Do not put yourself at risk. And I want to say a special message to the young men, mostly men, who are out there with illegal firearms and who are the shooters. I ask you, I beg you, and I pray that you will find your humanity, that you will think about the sanctity of life. Before you pick up a firearm and pull the trigger, aiming for somebody else, think about the number of children that have been killed just in the last 2 weeks. A 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old. A list that is painful for me to even recite. Families that will be forever shattered. Families that will not recover from this hardship. Mothers' hearts that are broken. Fathers who are destroyed. Grandparents who are living in mourning. Think about that, young men, before you pick up a firearm. Think about that before you pull the trigger. Value your own life, but also value the life of others, and particularly our children. It's no coincidence that we are announcing our weekend plans here in Ogden Park. 2 nights ago, a 3-year-old girl was seriously injured in a shooting just over a mile southwest of here. And over the weekend, a 1-year-old was shot and killed just a mile in the opposite direction. This is not who we are as a city, and cannot be who we are as a city. And when it comes to solving this problem, there are no simple or easy answers. If there were, we would have seized upon them years, maybe decades ago. We simply fundamentally must challenge ourselves. Me as the mayor, superintendent, as superintendent of the police department, but community organizations, the faith community, other elected officials. We must all challenge ourselves. I said this before, and I know it to be true. Those young men that are out there on those corners, those young men who are playing out some fantasy on social media, we know who they are. They live in our communities. Reach out to them with a message of love, a message of reconciliation, and a message of hope. If we turn those young men around, it will inure to the benefit of the entire city, and we will all be the better for it. We have to do a better job of loving our children and providing them with an alternative to the life that too many of them have fallen prey to. Too many of our young men are prey to the streets, prey to gangs and drug enterprises that use their vulnerability, use their youth and naivete against them, putting them out on street corners to do what? There's no life there. There's no destiny. There's no dreams. There's no passion. But if that is all we give to them, to those young men, we have to do better as a city to step up and make sure that every single young person is connected to healthy, meaningful activities. That's what all of us want. That's what we're working towards. And we need to do better as a city. But we need to prick the consciousness of those young men before they pick up the firearm, before they find themselves on a track where they feel like they have no other course. I want to stop and eliminate entirely the pipeline of our young men to the streets. I want to create a pipeline to the legitimate economy. I want to create a pipeline for a life of meaning and purpose for the young people in our city. Now, throughout the weekend, the Mayor's Office of Violence Reduction will be working in partnership with community leaders like Chris Patterson of the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago to broaden Chicago's street outreach in our neighborhoods and struggling with the epidemic of gun violence. We are, in this administration, 100% committed to the efforts of our street outreach workers. We put our money where our mouth is. We funded street outreach for the first time in our 2020 budget, first time ever that the city that made that kind of commitment. And we doubled down on those efforts more recently, using our CARES Act funding to provide even more resources, millions of dollars, to support this important effort. Part of that partnership will include the use of Chicago's first ever violence reduction dashboard, helping better equip these teams to provide de-escalation and intervention services on the ground in our communities, all of which builds on our expansion of street outreach and trauma-informed victim services throughout our city. I want to take this moment to give a special shout out to the many local community members who've been working tirelessly to help our police department and other city agencies curb the violence in our streets. And we will be working doubly hard this weekend. None of us, all of us understand that this is not easy. But I want you to know that we see you, we know you, and you are truly appreciated. Now, as I said earlier, keeping our neighborhoods safe from gun violence is not just the business of our police department, it's on all of us. And this weekend will be all hands on deck. And I'm hoping that we can turn around the fortunes of people in neighborhoods who are under siege, that this will be a better day, a better weekend, a better month, and a better year for them. So Superintendent Kelly mentioned that we're here in Ogden Park because of the investments in Invest Southwest. This new track and field behind us, which will open in a few weeks, is a site of our Invest Southwest initiative. For all of our focus on this weekend on public safety, it doesn't end this weekend, or this summer, or this year. If we are truly to reverse the epidemic of gun violence and make every neighborhood safe and secure, we need to continue working to reverse the circumstances that underpin it. The circumstances that lead people to feel like their only option is the streets and gangs and drugs. That means reversing the generations of inequity, of poverty, lack of hope, and despair. Doing better means stepping up. It means doubling down on our citywide and our city with investments like Invest Southwest, Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, and our investments elsewhere, along with our investments across social services, jobs, trauma supports, and the array of youth programming that we announced just last week, and doing everything we can to stop the violence. Now, everybody here knows that we've got a long way to go, but we have to get there. We have to have hope and belief, but more importantly, determination that we will get there. And I look forward to working and continuing the hard work with everyone in this room, but across the city, who understands the urgency of this moment, who is committed to doing everything possible to improve the lives and fortunes of our young people. That is a noble cause. That's what gives me hope. That's what gives me energy and a sense of urgency and a commitment as your mayor to do everything in my power to bring hope and prosperity and vibrancy and safety to every neighborhood. Thank you, and at this time, I will welcome the superintendent to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor and Superintendent Kelly. It's great to be here. Ogden Park reminds me of my old neighborhood back in Dallas, where obviously this July weekend we focused on reducing violence. We're in the 7th district here. We're served by Commander Larry Snelling, a native of the Inglewood community. This neighborhood reminds me so much with the people, the parks of my old neighborhood, the mom and pop stores, this entire community, the talent, the resiliency of this community, the energy that comes out of this neighborhood is like none other. That's why all of us up here are so committed, where we hear and feel and see the pain, to see the unimaginable tragedy that this community experienced just this week. A 20-month-old baby was shot and killed just blocks away from this park. 2 days ago, a 3-year-old girl was shot immediately west of here. And just like in my old neighborhood, the people here know the impact of violence better than anyone. That's why community members, neighbors, faith-based leaders, and organizations are stepping up to say enough. enough of the violence so that our residents can enjoy a safe and healthy 4th of July weekend. We need everyone's help to make our strategy work. We can't do it alone. No one knows their blocks better than the folks that live here. To amplify these efforts for CPD, we will have an additional 1,200 officers each day, beginning today, to combat gun violence. We'll be conducting strategic police missions to recover illegal guns, to build on our seizures to prevent the next shooting from ever happening. You know, the best way to reduce violence is to prevent it from happening in the first place. But let me be clear, this is not a law enforcement only effort. Our all hands on deck approach isn't just about police departments. It's about letting everyone in Chicago know that the city cares about them. We see you, South Side. We see you, West Side. We see you, Inglewood. It's about working with our partners in the park districts, streets and sanitation, Department of Transportation, and others all weekend long. It's about working with our street outreach, violence interrupters, and block clubs who are on the ground in these communities every day. Earlier this morning, we kicked off Operation Clean Mission in the 6th District to provide a blitz of city services, including fixing broken streetlights, filling in potholes, and removing graffiti. It's also an opportunity to engage with community members and connect with them to the programming and the support systems they need to thrive. CPD is also participating in a series of events called Hit the Hood. These events are organized by community leaders and are meant to provide a peaceful opportunity to celebrate the 4th of July. We'll also have officers on foot patrols across our neighborhoods, including the walking beat, to get to know their neighborhoods and residents and to protecting them so they can celebrate safely. This is truly, again, an all-hands-on-deck effort. I want to thank the residents, the city workers, the community-based organizations that came out this morning in an effort to lift up our neighborhoods. I want to thank our officers who are working this holiday weekend to keep families safe. These officers have worked numerous 12-hour days and have had countless days off canceled already this year. Yet, they remain committed to serving this city and keeping Chicagoans safe. I think we all need to celebrate a little bit this weekend. Let's celebrate our country. Let's celebrate summer in Chicago. Let's celebrate each other. I only ask we celebrate responsibly, safely. Now, I would like to turn it over to Chris Patterson, who has been a tremendous partner in reducing violence in Chicago through our street outreach efforts. Chris, thank you.
Well, thank you, Superintendent and Mayor, for your support and imagination as it comes to decreasing violence in the community. So here's an update from the outreach community, the men and women professionals who are working across the city of Chicago, who account for about 85% of the violence that is happening. So there's 22 communities that make up Community Partnering for Peace, as well as other outreach organizations that are gonna be hitting the block clubs. We'll be working around the clock. And in most cases across the city, you'll see outreach workers, case managers, and victim advocates working from a 2 p.m. to a 2 a.m. shift, and even longer than that, because we know that maybe half of the conflicts that are arising are happening after midnight. So we'll be doing that starting July 4th weekend, as well as every weekend that extends throughout the summer. We really appreciate the community coming out, like in so many instances, our ministries, our local ministries that are in the communities are gathering forces, gathering people to come out and support. We're having cleanups. And again, it's all in a response to the young people who have been killed and to unfortunately, people of all ages who are impacted by this violence. So we'll be around for answers when they come, but just something to look out for this weekend. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I'll introduce Richard Ford, the 3rd Commissioner, Chicago Fire Department.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard C. Ford II. The Chicago Fire Department wants everyone to have an enjoyable and fun weekend. And yes, it can be possible to have fun while remaining safe. While many of us know that fireworks are banned statewide in Illinois, some people are still not aware of the fact that here in Chicago, bottle rockets and sparklers are also illegal to use. Sparklers may seem harmless, however, they burn at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is easily high enough to set clothing on fire and cause third-degree burns, unfortunately, to kids, disfiguring them. Sadly, each year in Chicago, we have firework injuries that range from minor to extreme. These include the loss of fingers, hands, damage to eyes, and even fatal head wounds. Earlier this week, the fire department was joined by CPD with a demonstration of the amount of damage that fireworks and sparklers can cause. You can go to Twitter, CFD Media, and watch the video that shows how dangerous these devices can be. This year, we're seeing many more commercial-grade fireworks than we've ever seen in the hands of the public before, due to many of the cancellations of professional displays. This means some very dangerous devices are now in the hands of those who are not trained properly on how and to handle and safely use them. Remember, fireworks, including sparklers, are dangerous and they are illegal. The holiday will see a lot of boat and lake use. As always, the Chicago Fire Department Air Sea Division will be prepared along with our brothers in blue and the Police Marine Unit to any water incident with divers, boats, and helicopter. If you're going to be on a boat, always wear your personal flotation device. Be mindful of alcohol consumption, as many overboard incidents occur after drinking. Make sure your boat has an approved fire extinguisher, and please stay close enough to the shoreline to ensure your cell phone can be used to summon help, or have a marine radio on board to contact the Coast Guard if you need assistance. While the beaches are closed, some will not be able to resist the temptation to go into the water. If so, I implore you, please keep your children in your view at all times. And lastly, it's going to be hot this weekend. Please leave the fire hydrants alone. The hydrant spray from the hydrants create a mist that makes it very difficult for drivers to see kids in the street. That can cause a tragic incident. Additionally, open hydrants slow our response as crews have to shut down the hydrants fully in order to hook up their hose to fight fires, and that wastes precious time. And when it comes to fighting fires, lost time can mean lost lives. Do not open hydrants. Please enjoy the holiday, but keep safety and your priority always. With that, I'll bring forth Commissioner Rosa Escanero of BACP.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. Good afternoon. My name is Rosa Escareño, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. And like many of you, I'm very thrilled that we have now the time through this COVID crisis where we are able to reopen, and we are starting to resume gradually under phase 4 reopening of our businesses throughout the city. The last 3.5 months have been extremely challenging for our business community. And as the mayor has stated, our goal has been to continue to support them in a way that we continue to gradually open. And it certainly has been a unique time in my years of service with the city. We've never seen anything like this. And so we are all very excited to get back to some sense of normality. Certainly having the bars and restaurants open allow us the opportunity to be out enjoying many of these locations that have been closed. We're able to now to go to the gym. We're able to go out and get a haircut and really visit the salons. Everything under the guidance of the health commissioner. And we know that the businesses have been following those guidelines very closely. And I'm very proud of the efforts that our business community is doing to ensure that we continue to move in the right direction. But we can't let the excitement, especially during this holiday weekend, to reverse the months of progress we have made in regards to the number of cases continuing to decrease. And we are listening to Dr. Arworthy and her guidance as we continue to progress forward. And that is our goal, to continue to move forward and move forward together. As we prepare for the 4th of July holiday weekend, it's critical for all businesses to follow the Phase 4 guidelines. And we have done a lot of outreach. We have held numerous webinars. We have ensured that we are oversaturating the business community with updates as they come. And so we feel very good about having provided adequate and ample information to our business community. We make ourselves available throughout the entire weekends to make sure that we are giving them the information that they need. We've held over 20,000 calls. We've done over assisted businesses just in the thousands over the last few weeks. And so we feel very comfortable about the outreach, awareness, and education that we have done. But now the time for education is over. And businesses must take the guidelines seriously. The health of our city, the health of our economy truly depends on it. At this point, the businesses should know that the capacity is limited to 25% or 50 people within any establishment, whichever is fewer. They know that face coverings should be worn at all times, especially by their employees and their patrons. They know that 6 feet social distancing is a must, and they know that social distancing applies to individuals as well as tables. And I am happy to say that the vast majority of our business community are following the rules. I've been out there with our enforcement team. I walk the commercial corridors and see the good work of many of our businesses as they're starting to open. They're getting it right, and they're doing exactly what we tell them. And I know many of them follow up with us because they want to do everything right. And so thank you to the business community. We encourage you to follow in that way. Unfortunately, though, I have also seen examples of activity that really concerns me, mostly at the bars and the restaurants, and unfortunately, mostly at the places that serve liquor. And so we want to make sure that we understand and that the businesses understand what is not acceptable. I have seen standing room only on rooftops and bars. Remember, patrons must be seated at all times, butts and seats. I cannot say that enough times as I talk to the businesses. I have seen lines allowed outdoors and congregating with no masks and no social distancing. Any line being formed outside of a business, it is the responsibility of the business to address that. And if you cannot manage your line, then go with reservations only. And if you refuse to manage the line, then unfortunately we're going to have to manage that for you, and we're going to stop the practice. I have also seen cocktails sold for immediate consumption on the street. When the mayor established a legislation to support businesses to allow cocktails to go, it did not mean go pick up the cocktail and drink it on the sidewalk. It meant get a drink, prepare your own homemade drink, bottle it up, put it in the car, take it home, and consume it there. And I have seen that time and time again, and we have warned businesses and even cited a few. And most alarming, I've seen a few a few cases with really packed bars, as though we are not in a crisis. And let me just be clear. Again, thank you to those that are doing everything right. But we will be out there and we will be taking enforcement action. Up until now, reopening enforcement efforts have focused purely on educations and warnings. And we've canvassed and provided the guidance. And starting now, under the mayor's guidance, I have directed my team to ramp up the enforcement efforts. And we will be partnering with police and fire and buildings and health to ensure, these are departments to ensure that we have adequate resources and that we're out there supporting our city in the progress to move forward and keep everybody safe. So we will be out there in task force manner. We will be out there issuing enforcement, because the time for awareness and education is over, and the time to be serious about keeping our city safe starts now. Businesses that violate Phase 4 guidelines will face citations up to $10,000 per offense. And we will see, and if we see egregious disregard of health and safety, as the mayor indicated, we will not hesitate to shut you down. Our goal is not to shut you down. We want to encourage our economy. We want to ensure that we're progressing, but we are not going to, this is not the time to step back. We've seen so many other cities across the country stepping back, going back to Phase 3 and even beyond. We want to keep moving forward. And in order to do that, unfortunately, if you are not following the guidelines, we have to step in and take strong measures. So I want to thank the Chicago Police Department. The Vice Control Unit is always our partner, and we will be out there partnering not only with Vice Control, but with all the districts to ensure that the guidelines that the Dr. Arwady and that the mayor has put in place to keep Chicago moving forward, to keep us be unique in a way that we are working together, embracing each other, keeping our entire city safe. It's not just about the bottom line of one business, it's about the bottom line for all our residents. And if we continue to work together, staying safe, we will continue to open up even more and grow our economy sooner rather than later. So I want to ask everybody to please enjoy the weekend. And for businesses that often say to me, well, what do I do when the patron shows up and they refuse to wear a mask? Then refuse them entry. Refuse them entry, because one person will ruin it for the people that you are actually serving. And most importantly, to the residents, if you are going to come out and go to a restaurant or go to a bar and you are not going to wear a mask, guess what? Stay home, because you are going to keep everybody safe by doing so. Thank you, everybody, and now I'm going to ask the mayor to come back up.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now happy to take your questions.
I was going to say happy Friday to you, Mayor, but it's only Thursday.
But it's only Thursday.
First of all, a lot of people out there are concerned that this is just going to be another repeat of the last 2 weekends because it's hot, and that's what happens in the summertime. I know you've got a lot of efforts here, but how can people feel confident that things are going to be any different?
Well, look, I appreciate the concern. We share the concern. And I can assure you that the last 2 weekends we were doing everything that we could. I think every single day we learn from what happened the day before and that day, and we use that information and that knowledge, that data, to make adjustments. And so I have confidence, having heard in more detail what the public safety plan is, not just from the police department, but a network of resources across the city government, but also in the community, that we are doing everything possible to keep people safe. But look, the bottom line is we need those moms, those dads, those grandparents, and we need those young men who are driving this violence to have a sense of compassion and empathy and value the sanctity of life and think about those things before they pick up a gun and just shoot into a crowd. These children that have been killed, they weren't targeted. They were with somebody who may have been targeted, or in the instance of the 10-year-old, she was in her house, living her life, not out on the street. So there's a lot that we can do, and we continue to do that. We're committed to doing that. But this is also about individuals stepping up and saying, what can I do?
Dana Kozlov of CBS 2 asked, there's a concern that on this 4th we'll see big parties in backyards, in the streets. What are police going to be doing about calls for large gatherings, and will police be dispersing, or will this even be a priority?
Yeah, of course it's a priority. As I said in my opening remarks, we know that in certain areas that are plagued by gun violence, large gatherings are a recipe for disaster. So that's where encouraging people, first of all, follow the rules of COVID-19, which still doesn't allow for large, massive gatherings, but we're trying to be as proactive as we can, looking at social media, and then calling up people and being present to disperse those crowds. We're never not going to engage in that strategy.
Megan Hickey with CBS 2 is asking, in 2018 and 2019, there were 1,500 officers deployed on the 4th. Why only 1,200 this time around? And do you have confidence that...
Well, that's 1,200 on top of what the regular deployments are. I think we've got the right number of people, coupled with all the resources of our community partners, our other city agencies that are going to be out there and visible. We're looking at the data that tells us where we believe that the hotspots are going to be. So I'm confident of the deployment strategy.
You mentioned the violence reduction dashboard. Can you explain more of what that is?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at aggregating up the information that we use on an individualized basis that we share with street outreach that looks at areas where there are the hot spots, and then putting that out and making it available to members of the community so they can see it for themselves real time.
Laura Washington said that Police Superintendent Brown is planning to sweep young people who are hanging out on the street corners and encourage authorities to hold them in custody over the holiday weekend. She's wondering how will that plan resolve the issue long term, and is there a plan to address criminal activity beyond the next few days?
Yeah, I'll let the superintendent speak for himself, but that is not what he said. Unfortunately, one reporter did a cut and paste of statements, put it together, and then it became the truth, instead of actually looking at the superintendent's actual statements. So that's unfortunate, and BEZ, frankly, should be ashamed that they did that and allowed that to happen, but that is not what the superintendent said. I'll let the superintendent speak for himself.
What I said, and I'll repeat, we are aggressively going after drug and gang criminal networks, primarily focused on the mid-level and upper-level masterminds behind the drug trade in Chicago. And we believe this drug trade is the precursor to the violence we're seeing. Competition over thousands and thousands of dollars each day. And I would add this, you can arrest your way out of this, you can't. And we're not talking about mass incarceration, nor are we talking about focusing on young people. But we are aggressively going after criminal networks that fuel the drug and gang conflicts that are the pipelines to the violence we've seen over the weekend. Thank you.
Before you go, Superintendent, if I
Yes.
could just ask you, this is the first time we are seeing you in your uniform.
How do you like it?
Well, you look good, sir.
Oh, thank you
how,
so
how,
much.
how does it feel to now be, I guess, fully CPD?
I'm really proud to wear this uniform, be associated with this fine department. I have gone through great lengths to, meet people, greet them, but nothing better than wearing the uniform to show you're fully adopted into this fine department that I'm so proud to be associated with.
And what will your plans be this weekend? I mean, are you going to be out every day, I presume? Or, I mean, can you just talk about what your plans are going to be with your officers?
Out every day, day and night, managing our response real time. Thanks.
Mayor, I have a couple of off-topic questions, if I might. Greg Hines with Cranes says Governor Pritzker has returned to a more or less normal press conference format in which, with all respects to me, he said people can ask their own questions and follow-ups. Why aren't you doing that, he asked?
Yeah, I think we did this at the request of the media. I'm happy to return to whatever format. Obviously, the questions come fast and furious, But we did this in deference to the media that was concerned about individual reporters' safety because of COVID-19. You guys want to come back? Come back.
Last two questions.
Bill Cameron asks, what's going to be the process to choose a location for the Chicago casino?
Well, we have done a lot of diligence and continuing to do diligence on what the concept of an entertainment center, destination place, should look like that has a casino as its anchor. My team has really looked at examples and models all across the country, and we're looking at models that are successful in other parts of the world. We're also looking to see what happens with the casino industry rebounding. You know, Las Vegas opened up in early June. I believe Illinois casinos are just coming online. So we're watching to see what's happening in the marketplace before we take the kind of next big formal step, which is put out an RFP. We want a request for proposal, and I'm saying that it could be an RFI or some other form of procurement. We want to make sure that whatever we put out is going to be well received by the market. We have big dreams for an entertainment complex that includes the Chicago casino. Those dreams are big, and I think rightfully so for a city of this greatness, because we know that the construction of it is going to mean good paying union jobs. We know that once the complex is complete, that's going to be good paying jobs for the workers that are there. And I want this to be a world-class destination for Chicago. And we have some ideas about what that might look like in the component parts, but we're still very much doing our market research, if you will.
Last question.
If you'll indulge me, I just have two, and then
Yeah.
I'll be all covered here. Greg Pratt is wondering, Mayor, did the IG's report on Eddie Johnson raise any issues with how you or your administration handled anything about the Johnson situation? And did it raise any issues with how any current police employees handled that situation?
Well, obviously, the IG looked at a range of different issues regarding how that night unfolded, both before Mr. Johnson was found asleep with his car idling and afterwards. And those recommendations are in the hands of the superintendent, and he and his team will review them and proceed accordingly.
Final one I had was from Kelly Bauer with Black Club, and this is more coronavirus. She says, will you consider a citywide mask mandate as coronavirus begins to climb in the rest of Illinois?
Well, we have emphasized the necessity of wearing a face covering in public. That's been a directive now for quite some time. We're re-upping that and also reiterating the importance of doing that. It's, in my view, foolish to be outside in public without having a face covering on, particularly in areas where it's challenging to social distance. And as Commissioner Escarena said, businesses have the responsibility to make sure that anyone that enters their premises is wearing a face covering. If you don't want to wear a face covering, don't go out. But if you're going out, wear a face covering. And I know young people feel like, I'm young, nothing can happen to me. Not so. So it's really, really smart, incredibly prudent for people to be wearing face coverings when they go out in public. We know that that does a lot at helping bend the curve of the virus, reduce the amount of spread, and it's gotten us to where we are now, despite what's happening in the rest of Illinois. Chicago still continues to trend in the right direction, and we want to make sure that that continues to be the case, but we can't get there if people don't take this public health guidance seriously.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone. Happy 4th of July.